Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Wandering Road Podcast. I'm your host Chris, alongside my co-host Dean. Joining us today as a guest host is JJ from Southern Demonology. We're glad to drag you on to another episode. I think we're at 4 to hour 1.
Well, I only have 13 episode long seasons now, and yeah, you will be back. That I promise you. It's not just a one and done kind of deal.
Oh, we look forward to it. That was a fun time as well. But today, folks, this is going to be our Christmas special. So jingle bell, jingle all the way. So I hope you enjoyed today's episode. But before we get started with today's show, if you'd like to be on the show to share your experiences, please reach us via our email address, twroadpodcast@gmail.com. Again, that's twroadpodcast@gmail.com. And with that, we'll start today's show. How you doing, guys?
Hanging in there, man. Pretty good. How about you guys?
Yeah, not bad at all. We are recording on a Black Friday, and I cooked all day long yesterday, and my family is not American, so I get to bring Thanksgiving traditions every year into our home, and I'm always tickled to death to do it.
Oh, man, what did you cook?
I cooked a honey glazed ham with stuffing, mashed potatoes, veg-all casserole, which... This veg-all, it doesn't sound like anything special, but a little old lady from the VFW gave me this recipe when I was in high school, and I have been making it ever since. It's the easiest gosh dang thing in the world to make, and whoever has it, like, they demand me to bring it back every single time. So I'm tickled to death.
That kind of sounds like my mom does veggie pizza every year. I don't know if, so what's in that recipe that you make?
All right, it's the easiest bloody thing in the world. You take 2 cans of veg-all or just general diced vegetables, put it into a casserole dish, and I usually do a square one because it makes it easier. You put in about half a jar of Cheese Whiz, so this is not healthy by any stretch of the imagination. You mix it up, and then you take a pack of Ritz crackers, you crush them up, you put it on the top, you melt a little bit of butter, then you pour it on top of the Ritz, and then you bake it for 15 to 20 minutes on 350, and it tastes like heaven.
You had me a Cheese Whiz. I got to try that. That's really good. What about you, Chris? What did you guys have for Thanksgiving? Anything good?
We had your normal turkey, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole. Was it casserole or just green beans? I can't remember. But
you're drunk.
Yeah, maybe. Maybe I was at the time. No, I wasn't. It was your standard Thanksgiving food. The thing I look forward to the most is the pies afterward.
Yes.
So... yeah.
Have you guys ever had pumpkin squares? Have you ever heard of that?
Pumpkin squares?
Yes, they're essentially pumpkin pie, but like in kind of like a cake form, and then they have the cream cheese icing with a little bit of nuts sprinkled on top. Oh, if you do it right.
I actually just watched a TikTok video about how to make those, and it sounded amazing.
They are. I wish I could share them with you guys. They're so good.
Well, the one thing I did not make yesterday, but I'm going to make this weekend, is my ancestral banana pudding recipe.
Yes.
And banana pudding is serious game in the South. And my mom is renowned for making the best banana pudding ever. And my God, is it true? I can only do it partial justice, but even mine it doesn't taste like bananas. The sauce, it's a vanilla sauce, but it tastes more like a caramel sauce. Oh God, it's the richest thing in the world, but it is just to die
Note
for.
to self: we're all going to JJ's for Thanksgiving. So next year.
I do cook a pretty mean Thanksgiving meal. I will have to say.
I got to ask though, real quick, and I'm sorry for the stupid question, but like, so I really haven't been to the South that often. Are bananas abundant in the South? Can you grow them down there, or is it kind of like an import? It's an imported, right? Okay.
Yep, absolutely.
It's interesting how it took hold as like, the fact that there aren't a lot of bananas down there, but it still took hold as a benchmark for some kind of dessert down there.
Well, all of our desserts in the South are really odd amalgamations, but dear Lord, you throw enough butter and sugar into anything and it's going to taste amazing. And that is the epitome of Southern cooking.
Yes.
All right, guys. Like JJ said, yes, today is Black Friday. We are recording our Christmas special a little early today because no one wants to actually record close to Christmas because we're all going to be busy. Let's jump right into today's topic. I wanted to kick us off with talking about the Saturnalia. As you guys know, I am a Roman junkie. So wherever I can fit that in, I'm going to fit that in. So the Saturnalia is kind of like the prelude of what Christmas turned into because it was an ancient Roman festival to the god Saturn. It's been celebrated for centuries upon centuries, even before like Christianity was even a thought. And the church kind of kept it around because people just celebrated it. And if you try to outlaw it, I'm sure you'd piss off quite a few people. But I wanted to touch up on a few interesting things about Saturnalia, the role reversal and social freedom. So within the Saturnalia festival, which took place from December 17th all the way to December 23rd, and that's when the church came into play and be like, okay, 24th, 25th, that's Christmas Eve, that's Christmas Day, and we're going to, overrule this pagan crap. What was interesting during Saturnalia, essentially Roman slaves were allowed to engage in behavior that they weren't necessarily allowed to before. So prime example of that would be if you were a Roman slave during that week, you could insult the shit out of your master within reason.
That'd be a bad idea because like the next day you got to go back. It's not like their memories got wiped the next day.
Right.
Yeah, it's like all the Purge videos where people start questioning, well, what happens if you steal a car on the Purge? What happens the day after? Do you have to?
Hey, that's a good point. Yeah,
that's a good point. Well, I think the reason why they were okay because there was a lot of feasting and drinking. Yeah, it said that some of the ancient philosophers, I think it might have been Pliny, one of the Plinys, that he hated Saturnalia, that he had this like soundproof room built in his house so his family can celebrate and he wouldn't have to be a part of it. And what they would do is they would get completely blasted and just go start pounding on his door for him to join in.
The Roman version of Scrooge.
You sure it wasn't Pythagoras? Because, dear Lord, that man was stingy as ever living hell. He hated people having excessive cups of wine. And so he's renowned for making Pythagoras's cup, where it has a hidden chamber on it and it works through gravity. And if you filled it up above a certain point, then the entire cup just empties itself.
They should incorporate that more into places.
Especially into corporate Christmas parties. Dear goodness.
Yeah, those are a little unruly. I have to say, if there was ever an indication that I am reincarnated from the time of Rome, this is because I had never heard of Saturnalia before, and I had never obviously heard of role reversals before. But I was gonna say I've had daydreams about like because we all like to play around with the idea like if I was rich, if I had servants, And I try to put myself in that because I've been to Indonesia and hung out with families who actually have servants who like come to their house every day and they cook for them, they clean for them, they just do the things that need to be done around the house. Now they're not slaves, they're paid for their services and they get to go home to their families afterwards, but it's still kind of like a servant master kind of relationship. So like I've never had that directly, but I always wondered like if I was rich and I had servants, I probably would not be comfortable with it, and I would probably do shit for my servants. I would be like, no, let me do those dishes, or I would have like one day a year where like I would just, our family would serve their family at our table, and then it would just be like the most awesome day. Maybe even not even once a year, like once a month or something. I don't know. Have you guys ever heard of role reversals, Saturnalia? Or before this, I know Chris did, but JJ, have you ever heard of that before?
Yeah, I have. And if you're looking for modern day equivalents, you can kind of find that within Hong Kong nowadays. There is such a plethora. I mean, there's an entire cottage industry where they will bring young women from the Philippines over into Hong Kong and they become the servants. And yes, they are paid, so they're definitely not slaves, but they can be treated just absolutely horribly. But every weekend, you will normally find them all clustered around a certain metro square, just letting loose and trying to have fun. And I couldn't begin to imagine because the few times I experienced that, I was the most uncomfortable I think I have ever been. I went, no, I can do that.
Yeah, it is uncomfortable.
The one thing that we kind of kept from the Saturnalia, I would say, is the drinking, the holiday drinking, and the gift giving, and also the gag gifts. Apparently, the Emperor Augustus was fond of giving gag gifts. He'd give people like super cheap gifts like a parrot or like random pieces of clothing or like knuckle bones. The weirdest shit that you could possibly think of, he would give as a gag gift during the time of the festival. And I mean, he's the emperor, so obviously you're going to laugh at it. Before I go into the part of the Saturnalia that I found the most entertaining, I think it was the Emperor Nero that essentially took from the imperial treasury and purchased prostitutes for everyone that was participating in the festival for the whole week. So he kind of...
I think that's the only beneficial thing I've ever heard attributed
Nero,
to
I know.
Nero. Because, for those who are not up on your Koine Greek, in Revelation, it's the most abused book in the Christian New Testament. But whenever you hear mention of the mark of the beast, 666, did y'all know it's not a number?
No, elaborate.
It is a name. It is Nidon Kasa. And the way that Hebrew letters work, because it's written in Greek, but it's really the original writer spoke Aramaic. And so all the characters are really supposed to be in Hebrew. And each one of those characters in the Hebrew Fidel or alphabet has a numeric value to it. And depending on whether you have a holum and they're not a long O sound that's fully written out, that number translates, if you add up all the words, to either 616 without the holum or 666 if you do have the holum. And that's because the writer or writers, because people actually think it was a school of writers, not just one, believed that Nero was the Antichrist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes complete sense.
He certainly did enough bad crap.
Go ahead, Dean.
I was just going to say that I see this. I don't want to go into a spiral of like theological, because it's probably going to be really boring to our listeners. But now that I have you guys here, you're both Christian. And if you read that and you know that about the Bible, do you still believe that there is like a revelation and there is an Antichrist? Or do you kind of take that portion of the Bible and think of it as like a historical narrative as opposed to an actual prediction of the future? Yeah, JJ was saying, it might have been written by people who thought that Nero was the Antichrist back then, but he clearly wasn't because we didn't see the end of days after his reign. So does that mean they got it wrong and they were kind of right? It's coming, or do you think that it's just like a historical narrative that doesn't really have any lay of future for it?
Look at this devil's advocate trying to rattle our faith.
No, I can't.
Look at you.
I'm curious, man. I have questions.
It's a phenomenal question. So when I say that Revelation is completely abused, people try to make it into a blueprint of, it's written down. So this is how the apocalypse is going to happen and end of days is going to happen. And there's, you can calculate things and say, if this happens, then this is going to happen. It's not Nostradamus. It is not a prophecy of things that because humanity, for some god awful reason, has been in love with the idea for at least 2,000 years, if not much, much longer, that the end of the world is upon us. And Revelation is no different, but to me, it is a book of pure symbology. In fact, the 7 different events, I had a professor that believed this, and I could actually pretty much agree with it, that it's really just one event that's described 7 times. And you can either say one of two things, that if this truly was a revelation from God, then it was written and conveyed in the only way that the writer knew how to. And that is with biblical references and symbols to try to get the point across. If nothing else, it was something that the writer, without the vision, believed and communicated in the same fashion. Will we ever know? No, we will not. So we just have to trust that this is something important to the faith. But if you can't take the actual events and map them out, then what is the importance to it? And that is, it is a symbol of faith. It is trying to unite concepts into an idea of what the end times might be. And that's important in and of itself. But just because the ancients thought it applied to one thing doesn't mean that it is irrelevant. Yeah. However, I would say that just like them believing that Nero was the Antichrist was wrong, so too is some extreme Christian nationalist groups who think that, oh my gosh, we can't ever use barcodes because
I'll tell you guys a quick.
Okay, I will shut up. I'm off my soapbox now. Sorry,
you're good, man. That was great. That was a great breakdown. I really like that, and I have to tell you guys a quick story. So I did, like I said in previous podcasts, I did lean into Christianity because that's how I was raised. I was raised Catholic, and I did try to take it seriously for a while because I figured, like, I grew up around it. It makes sense to me. And I think it's right. So if I believe in it, might as well lean into it. And I think one time I got a license plate when I changed states for a job. I got a license plate that had 666 in it. And I was so bothered by it. I was like, what? Like, this is terrible. And then I did a bunch of research on the 666 and then I came across what you were saying, JJ, the historical reference in the translation of how it's not actually a number. And then I went even deeper into ancient cultures of Eastern religions and Eastern beliefs. And I'm like, oh, well, 666 in other cultures is actually a lucky number. Okay, so let me just change my perspective. And I was no longer freaked out by it. But isn't it funny that one little thing that you can pick up on, God isn't going to come down and tell you directly, oh, no, all that anxiety and all that fear that you're generating, it's completely unwarranted. You're just self-harming yourself. It's not worth it. But just the fact that we live in a reality where there isn't a God that does that for us is scary. And then the second point of why that's scary is because we all know there are religious leaders out there, even to this day, who we think are close to God or are really holy or whatever, or not even doesn't have to be God, it can be any religion, like someone who is a Hindu, a devout Hindu, and then you find out that that person who supposedly is close to their religion is engaged in debauchery or something that is anti their religion, and they're just, putting on a show this whole time. And I am terrified of the idea that if you go back thousands of years, there is no God, or God does not step in whenever somebody like that gets into power and maybe messes up a translation or on purpose or whatever in the Bible that stays in the Bible for thousands of years after. There's no there's no correction. So we, like you said, JJ, we could literally have whole swaths of the Bible that are just completely lost to time because of some one asshole's fuck up.
Maybe he does talk to us, but he forgot to unmute his microphone. So we can't hear shit.
Well, that's the thing. Like, I'm not trying to derail us from the main topic for today.
Go on, JJ.
If you look at the Hebrew Bible, there are 100 hopex legomena, which are words that are used only one time. And based upon Semitic reconstructions, we have a good idea of what those words are, but it's not exact. We don't have exact references. So whenever you get the story about the leeches, we think it's leech. We know it starts with an iron, which is usually a bad word, but we don't quite really know. There are references to rites and beliefs in the Hebrew Bible, especially in the oldest parts, that we have kind of forgotten what the actual meaning truly is. Azazel and the scapegoat in the desert. We have an idea, we have the translation, but we don't have the full history of what that truly means. And then if you start comparing the various versions of the Bible between the Masoretic or Hebrew text and the Septuaginta, which is the Greek version, then you will find references that are there in the Septuaginta that are not there in the Masoretic text.
Yeah.
So they have been skipped over, and it's usually because of simple clerical errors. So if you want to go into, the Bible is the most holy and perfect book in the world, it may have been at some point, but it carries mistakes just like everything else does. And even though the Masoretics were probably the most careful group in the world when preserving this stuff, you have to remember that, especially for the Hebrew Bible, it was nothing but oral traditions for hundreds of years before anyone thought to write it down.
Operative word there, human error, or operative phrase, human error. Okay, Chris, we've derailed your story for long, and I'm sorry, everyone. This is Christmas. La 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 la. Okay, let's get back to Christmas. Let's get back to
the last thing I will say is that I'm not bringing all of these things up to be a stumbling block for faith.
No.
If your faith is weak enough to be truly impacted by that, then that is another story in and of itself. Maybe at the end of the day, it is just like Immanuel Kant said, that there is no category for God, and that leaves all the more room for faith. However, the last thing I will say is I don't think that just anyone can pick up the Bible and understand it. It doesn't work like that. You can't have a 7-year-old get up and start preaching and suddenly that's going to be the word of the Lord because it comes from the mouth of the innocent. It takes practice. It takes study. It takes education. It means understanding the sits and libets, the situation in which it was written in, to truly understand. And you can even expand that out to the current topic that we are supposed to be talking about, of holidays. This isn't something that was handed to us on a silver platter, and just by participating in it, you understand everything that there is about it. There is historicity, there is evolution involved, and to truly understand whatever you're talking about, it takes that deeper understanding to be able to delve into it.
Yeah, totally fair.
JJ's invited to all of the holiday gatherings because I want to see people rage at his logic. The last thing I wanted to say about the Saturnalia festival is that they had a title called Saturnalicius Princeps, essentially meaning the ruler of the Saturnalia, and it was appointed by a vote. So like everyone would get together and be like, Dean, you're now the king of Saturnalia. And everyone would have to listen to you. So you could literally walk down the street and just point at a group of people and say, take off your clothes and start dancing. And everyone would just have to start doing that shit. So the whole point of that was to essentially undermine how stupid it was for one person to have that much power, control and telling people what to do. Apparently, there's a story that after the Civil Wars, that Saturnalia festival, Mark Antony took the king of the Saturnalia crown and offered it to Caesar in jest for him to be the king of Saturnalia. But he was like, he looked around at the people and was like, I'm probably not going to do that because they're probably going to kill me. So even that person in that position of power, like which he was dictator for life at the time, recognized the symbolism of that like title, even though it wasn't legitimate. Reading about this festival in general, and if you look up this festival and look up YouTube videos and whatnot, it's really interesting because it was literally just 7 days of like binge drinking and debauchery and gift giving. And I think maybe Christmas should be like that now. But
what about the kids, man? What about the kids?
But let's move on to Christmas itself. JJ, you were telling us before the show started, your family loved Christmas. That's like a really big thing for you and your family. So what do you know about like the history of Christmas?
All I can tell you is that just like we discussed on our Halloween special, Christianity, when it comes to its holidays, is ultimately parasitic. Like you were saying before, if someone tried to completely outlaw Saturnalia, then it would get such stiff resistance that it would essentially be a meaningless role. And so Christianity attempted to get by a lot of this by co-opting local pagan traditions and turning it into something in which they could then harness for their own. And I'm not saying anything bad. It's a solid marketing strategy across the board. And that's exactly what Christmas is. Do we think that Christ was really born December 25th? No. In fact, if you look at scholarship, it seems to point to around March something or other. So it definitely is not trying to be historically accurate. Rather, it's just attempting to co-opt local traditions to make it something more palatable.
Here's a good question I've always wondered. I think I had the answer to this years ago, but I've just forgotten. Where did the symbol of the Christmas tree come from? I think it was, I don't know why I remember like some kind of overlap with maybe the end of the Roman culture, but like the idea of decorating a Christmas tree, not for Christmas, but like decorating a tree in general kind of morphed into the symbol of Christmas for Western culture. Do any of you guys know the start of the Christmas tree, like where it came from? Pagan origins, medieval paradise trees, and the 16th century German tradition. See, that's what I thought. So like Tannenbaum, which is like the German word for Christmas tree. So essentially, you can go as far back as paganism, where they had evergreen trees used for their winter celebrations. So that's interesting. And there are also various cultures that have apparently incorporated as well, including the Egyptians and the Romans. I thought I had heard that, and the Celts. The Celts make sense, obviously, but I guess they all believed in general that the evergreen tree kind of like was a symbol of eternal life and rebirth and stuff like that, which kind of makes sense because you think about a tree like that, it's very much like a pyramid almost, right? It starts like at a wide base, and it goes up to a tip. Whereas like, a lot of other trees kind of have branches and they're all over the place, but this very like pyramidic, or if that's a word, like going up to the tip point, which is a very important symbol in a lot of religions, right? Starting down low and reaching the pinnacle the top of a deity or a god or something like that at the top, or heaven.
Well, that and all deciduous trees lose their leaves during the darkest times of the and coldest times of the year, and yet these trees stay, fully clothed and still operate.
Yes.
And certain of them, provide, delicious sap. So it makes
That's
total
awesome.
sense. And I will say that so many of the weirdest Christmas traditions began in the Alpine regions of Germany and Austria. Not to mention Spain, but I mean definitely Germany. Those countries, they've imparted so many of the really bizarre traditions to us. So.
Hiding the chestnuts in your socks. Something really random.
Not as weird as the Christmas log that poops out presents. But,
It's called the Cagatillo.
Oh my God. I've never heard of this.
Yep. The Catalina Christmas log. It's something.
Can we explore that for a second? Because I've never heard of that before.
Yeah. So apparently the background is that families feed the log treats in the days leading up to Christmas. And on Christmas Eve, they beat the ever-living shit out of the log with sticks while singing a traditional song. And then it makes it poop out presents.
Is this a South Park episode? I'm pretty sure I've seen this on something.
No, Mr. Hickey is not involved.
Oh my God. It'd be funny you find out historically, like the translation isn't like a physical, it's not a physical log. It's just some guy named Log. They just named a guy Log, and they would shove candy in his mouth and beat the shit out of him and get their frustrations out for the year.
Oh God! What if they actually like the Ren and Stimpy song "Log"?
Ren and Stimpy.
Oh,
I can't believe my parents let me watch that growing up.
Oh, that was such a good show. I love that show.
Dude, I was in student government all throughout high school. Loved every single bit of it. And going into junior year, and I don't think I've ever admitted this to anybody. Like there's a vice president role that was divided amongst boys and girls, and each had to give a presentation. And I roped some idiot friends of mine, and we all performed live the Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy song. In front of 1,200 other kids. Yeah.
Happy, Happy, Joy, Joy.
It actually went over pretty well. I won, but yeah.
See, Dean, you didn't call him a nerd.
JJ's cool, man. Anything JJ does is awesome.
I'm the exact opposite of cool, and I hate to say that, but it is.
JJ, I gotta ask you. I found something related to Christmas in Japan, and I have to verify it with you. KFC Christmas. What the hell is that?
Oh man. So Christmas has taken on a very bizarre twist. So if you compare Christmas and New Year's in the West to Japan, they are the exact opposite. Whereas Christmas is a very holy night, and then New Year's Eve is party central. For the Japanese, Christmas is the party time, and it's essentially dedicated to couples. It is a romance-orientated thing, but there are lights everywhere. I mean, it's beautiful in Japan. In fact, when my family was there last year during Christmas, we went down to Yokohama, and there's a huge Chinatown. And we went there for Christmas. Actually, I went to go see the Gundams, which was just amazing. But then we walked over to Chinatown afterwards, and it is just beautifully illuminated. Oh my gosh, I've got photos that I can share with y'all. But anyway, there are two major kind of things that you see in every anime, drama, and in real life. And it is first Christmas cakes. Everyone is selling Christmas cakes, but the second is fried chicken. It is the ultimate food to have for any party on Christmas. And this really started with KFC. KFC originally expanded over into Japan, and it was doing pretty poorly until there was a commercial, I think it was in the 80s, which featured the Colonel on Thanksgiving, on Christmas, saying, yes, chicken is the best meat you could ever have for Christmas. And it stuck. And now everyone, it may not have to be KFC, but it has to be chicken. And that is what you eat for Christmas.
That has to be a thing here.
Chicken for Christmas?
I am making a formal petition for a KFC Christmas.
Yeah, chicken is, well, I was going to say chicken
I'm
is.
sure they have tried to replicate.
I was going to say chicken is healthier, but maybe not fried chicken.
But,
oh my God.
And certainly not how KFC does it.
Okay, we have a question for you guys. This is very important. KFC or Chick-fil-A? Or is it apples and oranges?
You can't compare the two.
Okay. We preserved our product placement for both of them. That's smart. That's good. Whenever they reach out to us, well,
Well, I mean, it's best to compare bone-in places to fillet places, I guess. In terms of, so Chick-fil-A tastes better. However, the company itself is absolutely abhorrent in their practices.
Really?
KFC is the greasiest thing known to humanity, but at least it hasn't sold its soul. So
wait a minute. I got to hear this story because I always thought Chick-fil-A was like the quintessential like Christian company. They close on Sundays. Like they take care of.
No. Don't go into it.
Okay. I'll do my own research.
That's a safe bet. So,
yeah.
We can.
I was excited. I was excited that Chick-fil-A is opening down the street from us, but now you guys got me questioning my choice.
Real quick, funny tidbit. The Atlanta Falcons added a Chick-fil-A to their stadium. Serves no fucking purpose because NFL Sunday, they're closed on Sundays. So why the hell did you add a Chick-fil-A to your stadium in your most important week of the year?
That is nuts.
But there were a couple of other weird traditions that I found that I wanted to touch up on real quick before we dive into what JJ loves the most, Krampus. Yeah, he said that earlier. He loves Krampus. So we talked about the shitting log. We talked
Classic.
about the KFC Christmas. Apparently in Sweden, they have this goat that I don't know how to pronounce the town name, so I'll butcher it. The Gavle goat. And essentially what it is, it's a giant straw goat that's constructed in the town square. And the whole point of it is for the locals to try to vandalize it and burn it down before Christmas. And there's security posted around it, but it's been burned down more times than not. You have the Yule cat in Iceland. According to Icelandic folklore, there's a giant menacing cat known as the Yule cat, which I think is my cat that usually hangs out on the cat tree up there. And according to the tradition, the Yule cat will eat people who have not received new clothes by Christmas Eve. Could you imagine that?
What a clever way to get your population clothed and make sure people like share clothing.
That's interesting because, gosh, I mean, for Chinese, it's New Year's, and if you don't wear brand new, at least socks and underwear, and have and ideally have your underwear be red, then bad things can happen.
This is just nuts to me. Like this, let's just look at this for a second. Like how many times in history have the people in whatever degree of power you want to talk about instituted some kind of like superstition or belief that nowadays it's driving the economy. So let's create a story that gets people to buy more shit. And then, back then it was like the fear of death and a giant cat ingesting you. Now it's like the fear of not showing your loved one enough love for like Valentine's Day or something like that. It's just like it just boggles my mind. Like, what's the apex? There has to be a collapsing point at some time in the future, and I just can't envision when that's going to be, but it's going to come. Maybe the global economy will just implode. Who knows?
Considering that a good percentage of people don't have inner monologues, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, it's just a feedback loop. Yeah, it's just no inner monologue.
No, actually, it is a curious thing. Or people that have aphantasia, where they cannot picture things that are spoken to them.
I always thought I was weird for doing that, but
I will say this: growing up, and I was a huge bookworm, and I would read 3 to 5, novels a week. And on almost most of the books, all of the main characters would have these inner dialogues where they're always, talking with themselves. And I thought it was kind of curious. I'm like, I don't do that. What the hell is that really supposed to be? And I still don't.
That's so fascinating, because I actually think you just brought something up in my memory I haven't thought about in years, but I think I did the same thing when you were young, or when I was younger. I read stories where they would have a soliloquy or like a monologue or something, and I thought to myself, like, that's weird. Like, I don't think like that. Like, the thoughts that come into my head, they usually just come in like a whole blob. Like, it's just like a blob of understanding in like an instant. Like, there's no progression. It's like I just have the thought bubble enter my head, and it contains all of the information I'm thinking about. And it's just like that. But if I have to think about what I'm going to say, then obviously you have to have it progress. But if it's a thought by itself, it's usually, I guess, that makes sense. Like, you can't depict that in a book. You have to have a logical progression of thought to convey to somebody else outside your own brain. But that's interesting that, I've never heard anyone else say that. And I had the same thought. So I wonder how many other people out there have had similar thoughts about that, like reading a book or something, especially when they're young.
Yeah, I would be really curious. And I'm glad that you said that, because I don't feel quite so alone in that regard.
It's fascinating, actually. But the last thing I'll say on that is, whenever you think of something, and I would love to hear other people's perspective on this, but like, when I think of something, it just like, how does it work for you guys? Like, because no one talks about this. Like, this is a good opportunity, because when is this ever going to come up again? And we don't have to go too deep because the Christmas thing, but like, when you guys think of a thought, especially like a moderately complex thought, does it just hit you all at once that you can literally have a single thought pop in your head in an instant, and then you could probably write on it for like pages? Or do you have more of a progressive thought process where you have to go, if A, then B, then B, then C? Like, how do you guys think about stuff that's complex?
When I have a thought that I could write on for pages and pages, I have to do it at that moment or I will lose it.
But it's like one thought at once, all at once, pretty much. Okay.
Yep. It's like you have a fucking epiphany.
Yes.
Of like, it like reveals itself. It's like, you ever seen that meme with the cat where they put a flower on its head and it's like the prophecy is true and its eyes like blurs out and it's like floating through space? Yeah. That's what it's like when you get that one thought.
I love that.
I've always have followed my intuition, I guess you could say. And normally the first thought I have on a matter is the one that I go with. And whenever it manifests, then it's just there. Now, if I have to practice a speech, then typically I will practice it. And luckily I have I've had what professors have called a near eidetic memory. And so I'm able to retain that and then go forth and present it. But yeah, if it's just me, I don't sit there and rehearse things in my head. I'll just either know it or I don't know it.
You were made to be a coding technical genius, man, because I wish I had a mental brain like that, eidetic or whatever. Like, you just look at something, you just remember it word for word.
It's not so much. Like I've never been. That's why I say near, because I can't remember things exactly. But it can be decades later, and I'll remember what side of a book, a certain paragraph happened to be on, or it's just really the ideas. Like you can link the ideas in a circle, get a mental picture of how it is to you, how you should remember it, and then you can carry that with you, even though you may have lost some of the details. You have the idea and the understanding of it. And the curious thing is that whenever you learn an ancient language, like what I would do is that I would learn the basics. I would keep all that in a memory circle. And then if I needed to go back and refresh, then I'd have to kind of go back and fill in all those details that are not in that circle. And I've had other professors who have said, yeah, I do the exact same thing. Where, I'll sit there and plow back through the basics of a grammar in like a week, pick up all the details or nuances that I lost, and then go from there. So, yeah, I wasn't the only one in that regard.
This is awesome, guys. How about this? This is such a great Christmas episode.
To continue on the Christmas stuff, let's talk about one of Saint Nick's companions.
Yes.
His scary ass companions. One that JJ said before the pod he absolutely freaking loves. He couldn't wait to talk about him today.
Oh, yeah. Ooh, you hear the excitement in my voice. Oh,
the one and only Krampus.
And Krampus.
I can't wait to hear JJ's perspective on how shitty this was. But have you guys ever seen the Krampus horror movie?
I did. It sucks. It's so bad. He's like catching people with the long ass tongue. It's so fucking weird.
It was a good try. It was a college try.
I understand if you love Halloween or monsters that much and you want to keep that tradition going, I understand that need, especially in the modern times. In fact, there's a set designer and prop master in Texas, I believe. It's Still Beast Studios, but every Wednesday he will release these YouTube Wednesday videos where he goes through and crafts or shows you how to build things for yourself, that are monsters or masks or a whole bunch of different crap. And the latest one was how to make your Thanksgiving turkey look like a monster and it would still be editable. And it was awesome. I mean, I really like that idea of it, but yeah, I don't know. I've never really felt the need to extend that over into Christmas itself. Maybe I'm a weirdo.
No,
for that,
I agree with you, man. I like Halloween is awesome, and I love dressing up, and I love it for the kids, and I love all the creepy stuff. But I want my Christmas to be happy and jolly and snowy and wonderful. I don't need any bleed over.
See, I'm the opposite. I like the Grinch. I like Krampus. I like all that.
Well, then I have a
stuff.
surprise for you, Chris. We're gonna conjure Krampus, and he's gonna come visit you. He's gonna put you in his.
So Krampus only comes for bad kids.
Oh,
Mister, I was late today.
I was pumping iron. I'm a good boy at the gym. No,
flexing them guns.
So Krampus. I got to admit, it's really quickly. There's a show. I know Chris knows it. JJ, you probably, I don't know if you know it or not. One of my favorite shows, which is an adult cartoon, and if you haven't seen it, it's just wonderful. It's called The Venture Brothers, and
oh god,
it is such a brilliant show. Like to take the concept of like a Johnny Quest like character and then to show what their life would be like in real life, it would just be shitty and dark and depressing. It's like you take away all the superhero mantra and it's just like a really sad life, but it's also it has some like, spy stuff in it, and it's kind of like exciting and mysterious sometimes, but mostly funny. But they did a holiday special and it had Krampus in it, and the Krampus comes to the house, and he's just like putting people in his sack and whipping them with like a stick or whatever. Do you remember that episode?
I
gotta
do.
watch that again.
Yes,
That was my
I do.
first one.
I have to pull up this photo of me. Gosh.
Were you dressed as Krampus?
No, God, no. But I was dressed as number 14.
Oh, nice.
I handmade the costume. It's kind of the only time I've ever like gone that big into Halloween. But and of course, no one knew who the frick I was supposed to be. But I enjoyed the ever living heck. I can't find it. But yeah, it was awesome. I had the butterfly wings. I had everything.
Oh my God. I can't even, it's been such a long time since I watched that show. I can't think of the quotes, but like the guy who sounded like, what's that old show with, like number 14? Yeah. The sidekick characters. And he sounded like everybody was Raymond.
Yeah, I think that was number 13 or something like maybe. That. And then 14 was the plumper.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah.
They were in the episode where number 13 is rolling up to pick up number 14 and they're playing like the 14 is like pretending that he lives in a super secret pad and he's punching in secret numbers and he's getting changed into his outfit and they're both singing the song. Oh,
Chris
my
and
God. I have got
Chris and I used to do that. I remember that. Remember that, Chris? We're like dun 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 dun.
Yeah.
Ba, 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 ba. Just to be clear, it's Venture Brothers. It's Henchmen 21 and 24.
21 and 24.
21 and 20.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. Because I could. God, the details escape me, but I at least remember.
It's like if a nerd, like a real life nerd, actually made it into being a henchman. You guys remember his backstory, right? He was like abducted, like the henchmen took the wrong kid or the wrong guy, and they were all going to kill him. And then he was like 14, and they just like assimilated him into their henchman club.
Yeah. Before we get to Krampus, I got one thing to say, guys. I am the Bat.
I am the Bat.
We dressed up as Wizard of Oz, Dorothy, Scarecrow, Tin Man, and the Bat.
Hank.
So JJ, before we started the show, you said you loved Krampus. So why don't you go talk a little bit about Krampus?
Krampus as an idea is definitely interesting. Originally originating in, once again, the Alpine regions, you get this idea that St. Nicholas was accompanied by another figure who was cloven hooved, has, a goat's head typically, whereas St. Nicholas was only responsible for treating good boys and girls. Krampus was there to torment the bad ones. And depending upon the legend that you're dealing with, that could range from giving birch rods to kids. It could be, giving coal, or it could result in kidnapping the kids in the sack that he would carry on the back of his back, and then either just kidnapping them straight out or sending them straight to hell. Which, okay, that's a wide variety, but sure, why not? And I think the part that I just dislike are how the modern movie industry is so, like, horror industry is so starved for content that, oh yeah, let's just, let's reincarnate Krampus now and make a crap ton of just really pathetic horror movies about him. And I just don't care about that aspect of it. But I will say that, growing up, I had never heard of Krampus whatsoever. And those traditions are still very much preserved, even in the American South, where if you're a bad kid, what are you going to get? You're going to get a bag full of coal, and you're going to get a bundle of switches to get worn out on your butt. And to this day, I tease my son of, hey, you know what? you're going to be getting some gold. I'm going to get to whoop your butt. It's going to be such a good time. And even though we've divorced the entire Krampus aspect from it, those ideas are still very much preserved. And you find other regions that have very similar ideas. Like, and for Polish traditions, you have the Turan, and it is a very tall, shaggy, horned entity that also deals with naughty children. So
I was going to say, when you're talking about you were progressing through the story of Krampus, and I'm thinking like, okay, yeah, like I could see why using a little bit of fear, not just the threat of not getting presents, but the fear of maybe like getting some switches to be used on your butt by Krampus, and I'm like, that makes sense. And then you went to the part where it's like, oh, and sometimes he takes them straight to hell forever. I'm like, whoa, okay, parents, guys, too far, way too far. Reel it back. This is how we get people who turn into psychopaths.
I saw another story that said that if he doesn't take you to hell or to his lair to torture the kids, he just like puts them in the sack and just like tosses them in a river.
Jesus
and just
Christ,
drowns them.
What the fuck? This is See, this is why I honestly, and I'm not trying to start anything with this, I swear to God, but this is why I think the idea of like a permanent hell is just straight out of the concept of people trying to scare other people into submission. Because like what you just go to the worst possible thing to correct your child. Like, I don't know, the worst thing I've ever done to my kid to get them in, like get her into listening, is to say like, oh, the piggies are gonna come get you. And like, for, like, that's it. Like piggies, when I say they're going to get you, I don't imply they're going to eat her. They're just going to like tag her or something, like that's as far as I go. I don't want to say you're going to go to Krampus is going to take you to hell. Jesus God.
You're going to burn for all eternity in fire. Woo!
If you don't eat if you don't eat the rest of your eggs. Oh my God.
If you don't eat your dinner, Krampus is going to come with a bundle of sticks and whoop your ass.
Oh,
that's what's gonna happen. You see, like some old grandpa comes in with a Krampus mask on.
Oops, wrong mask. Hey, one thing I want to ask real quick. I don't know if you know this, JJ, but so there is a tradition. Apparently, I think it's in the like the Nordic countries or whatever, like where they all like the town men dress up as Krampus and they parade through the streets. I feel like I've seen that is like part of their tradition. And I was just thinking like I'm looking at some of these pictures of them and they're like terrifying, and they're actually like kind of legit looking costumes. And the first thing I wanted to bring up is, I've been thinking about this for years, and I think it's still true to this day, but imagine if you had, like, there's got to still be villages in this world that don't really tap into more modern culture. They don't really watch anything. They don't even have TV per se, or phones, or like iPhones. But like, what would happen if you walked someone in a costume that was done like by a movie master, that looked like it was a legit monster? Like, how do you think people would react to it if they had no real connection to other parts of the world? Would they just like, do you think it would like could it turn into like a mythological creature lore for them? Or would they just like try to kill it instantly, the person instantly? Or do you think that everybody in this entire world currently knows enough about movies and makeup that they wouldn't believe it to be real?
Okay, two quick things about that. I'm so glad you brought that up. So the people that do dress like that, you're supposed to buy them off with candies and treats so that they then go away, right? However, there has been a rash of hospitalizations and people just beating the crap out of these people every single
No.
What?
Yeah, it's amazing. But second, have y'all ever watched, maybe before your time because y'all were youngins, Steven Spielberg's Amazing Stories?
I have seen that. Yes.
I have not.
Okay, it was done in the 80s. Really, it was televised. Really bloody well done. Almost every single one of them. But there was one that featured, there was an actor who was playing the mummy, right? and he had professional get up done. It looked really real. And the problem is that his wife went into labor and he had to go to the hospital, and he couldn't get any taxis to stop for him because he looked like a monster. And the problem is that there was a real mummy that was also on the loose. And the entire story is about them kind of like interweaving with each other. It was
that sounds
hilarious.
funny and brilliant. Yeah. I think you can actually watch that on. I thought I saw that on Amazon or maybe Netflix or somewhere where they like posted that again. But yeah, that's awesome. I'm looking it up now, and I can see the makeup is really well done.
So I know that. So Dean or JJ, you guys can. It's an open question. So I know as of right now, Krampus was turned into like a companion of Saint Nick or Santa Claus, but previously he was seen as kind of the opposite. Like they were bitter enemies. Do you guys know anything about that or any further details on that?
Not really. I mean, I know that to an extent, but to me, this was always kind of a co-opt where then they became partners, and that's how the idea of some of these traditions were incorporated into the same kind of winter festivities that were taking place. But I will say that the government of Austria in like the 1930s decided to try to outlaw the practice of Krampus. And it was highly unsuccessful. And now that is the place where, Krampus traditions are still going the strongest, even after that fact.
Yeah, same. That's fascinating. And same goes for me. I only had ever heard the version of Krampus where he was the sidekick of Santa. So like he wasn't like deep down evil. Like he just was kind of there to equal, like make, balance out the good and the bad and to help get children listening to their parents and stuff like that. But this kind of touches on what we talked about in the other podcast that we did with the other group of guys recently, where we were kind of saying like, what happens in the evolution of religion? And it's kind of like similar, right? It's like if you think about, so like if you superimpose both of them as like working off of each other, but then if you look at it from the perspective of religion, like I wonder if there's ever going to be a time in the future where someone kind of uses, like says Satan isn't against God, but Satan is there to work with God to kind of like push closer people to God, if that makes sense. I don't know. Like, I wonder if that evolution happens in religion as well.
Yeah, that's a good point that you brought up, because I think that was a question that I asked. Well, Aaron and I asked when we did one of our episodes. I think we kind of tackled the theological discussion of like demons and whatnot. And at what point does some other ancient deity get incorporated into the present dominating religion? Because from what I see from Krampus, they theorize that it stretches back to pre-Christian Alpine traditions. So if this is a figure that existed in pre-Christian traditions, here we have a prime example of that being incorporated into the current dominating religion.
And see, this is kind of one of the many problems that is introduced by a religion that has a pretty severe dualism to it, where there's a good and an evil. It was kind of much simpler, especially in ancient Judaism, where there wasn't this idea of an evil enemy of God. For example, if you go into, I think it was First Kings, and you've got the lying spirit that God sends down into the mouth of the king's prophets to lie to him, to send him into his death. That lying spirit was directly controlled by God. In fact, everything was directly controlled by God. There was no enemy. So anyway, I'll stop deviating on that.
That was really good stuff.
Who can forget the absolute cult classic Santa Claus?
Yes. I don't think I ever saw that, but I remember that now. Santa Claus.
Oh, it was abysmal. Every Christmas horror movie that is a bad pun is just it's bad.
Have you guys ever seen the horror movie Jack Frost? There's a good version. There's like a version of the movie with the title Jack Frost. It's like a love story, but then there's a horror one called Jack Frost where it's like this guy. It's kind of like Chucky. This murderer inhabits the body of a snowman, and he just goes around killing people. And there's a really terrible scene where he violates a woman with his carrot nose in the bathtub, and that's probably why like people don't know about it, because it probably got canceled long ago. But it was just a terrible movie.
I did not watch that, and I don't think I ever want to watch that now.
I have seen bits of it, and yes, that it too is an absolutely atrocious movie.
But guys, before we wrap up for today, I think we've had an interesting show. We went down a few rabbit holes. We ragged on Krampus a little bit, talked about the ancient Roman Blackjack and Hookers Festival, which I like to call it. I did want to ask you guys, so feel free to, whoever wants to answer first, go ahead. What's your favorite aspect of Christmas, and what is one aspect that you dislike the most?
Go ahead, JJ. You take it first, my friend.
It is definitely buying presents for others. Although it is...
Is that what you hate, or is that what you like?
No, that's what I love the most. Getting to plan out, but it is also the part that brings the greatest stress to me, at least, because you're never sure if it's enough. Like, we grew up dirt poor. I grew up in a log cabin until I was in 8th grade. Then we moved into a double wide trailer. And, that is a step up where I am from, just to give you an idea. So, my mom, even though, it was a one income household, she went all out for Christmas, and it was an amazing affair. And I try to do the same thing here. And it does bring a good bit of stress of, have I really done enough to show everyone that I care about how much I love them? And in that regard, it's kind of, it can delve into the negative, but really, like, one of my favorite things in the world is just to go back home to Tennessee and spend time with my family and just be. And it doesn't really matter if you get a present, doesn't matter if you give presents. It's just a matter of being there. And it is one of the most peaceful times that I can ever remember. And I love that the absolute most.
That is awesome. And I think that we kind of share some similarities. I definitely did not grow up under such challenging means as it sounds like your family did, but we did have a single family income, and Christmas was always special in the sense that it wasn't really a holiday of abundance. It was just a holiday of like specialness, kind of being together and sharing. And then if you got like a really awesome present or a few presents, like that's really that's awesome. Like you got something you wanted. That's what I've been trying to do with my daughter, is like, I don't want to have it be a holiday where she just gets like a mountain of toys and like a mountain of all kinds of stuff. I want it to be like where, you appreciate the thing, like you look at something you get, and if it's like a few things, if they're really special, really awesome things, like that is infinitely better than having way too much. Like we live in a society, abundance now, like or not abundance, but like just like wanting too much. There's no moderation. There's little moderation. So I think I'm trying to make Christmas more a holiday of moderation for us, and just enjoy like the acts of Christmas, like we just put up our tree. We got like a beautiful, and believe it or not, folks, we can get real Christmas trees in Hawaii. They are expensive as crap. We got a beautiful tree, and we're going to decorate it today. So I just love Christmas altogether. How about you, man? Or how about you, Chris?
I share the same sentiment with y'all. I enjoy giving presents, the whole aspect of it. I'm a weird one. I don't like being showered with like many gifts because it just makes me feel awkward, just having like people just stare at you opening a present, just see the reaction on your face. It's like the most tense thing ever, but I do enjoy getting presents, and JJ, I'm the same way. You always wonder whether it's good enough or not, but I do enjoy that time of year and just the holiday season in general, being around family and visiting people that you haven't seen in a while, and just catching up with folks, and just the whole quiet and relaxing aspect to it.
Getting to watch the holiday movies that you love to death.
Yeah.
If I don't at least hear the Heat Miser and Cold Miser songs during this time, then something's gone
horribly, A Year Without a Santa Claus. I love that one. That's such a good Christmas classic.
And the last thing I'll share is living in the environment in Hawaii, where we have tropical weather. I do prefer tropical weather if I had to choose one kind of environment, but I do miss the cold. And I think some of the best memories I had growing up with related to Christmas was sitting outside in the cold by myself, in the snow, in my snowsuit with my sled, and just watching the snow fall and just listening to the deadening silence, and just being, wrapped up in knowing that I'm about to go inside, get some hot cocoa with marshmallows. Oh my God, that's heaven to me.
Yeah, I hear you. Real quick, favorite Christmas movie? Don't even elaborate. Just say a name. Just say a name. Just say a name. Just say a name. No explanation. Nothing. Just say a name. Mine is The Grinch.
A Christmas Story.
Oh yeah, and then what's the one with Will Ferrell? The Elf. I love Elf.
Elf. Yeah. Yes, that is a good one. All solid movies. All solid movies.
And the absolute worst thing about this bloody season is Mariah Carey. End of story. I hate that song. I hate everything to do with it. When I hear it, I want to just rage.
Oh, I can't wait to share that clip with my wife, because we are actually going to go see her at the arena when she comes into town here locally. So I've been blessed with sitting through that concert.
Although I will say that I have been to a Trans-Siberian Orchestra concert, and that was
I love Trans-Siberian Orchestra. That's so great.
Yeah, I need to go see them. But JJ, thank you for joining us today once again. We love having you around.
Thank you for having
me. You always, like I said before when we text back and forth, you have an open invite to whatever topic we're talking about. If you want to come on and join us, by all means, feel free. Tell the people where they can find you.
Sure. So you can find me at southerndemonology.com. The podcast has been in operation since 2017. I don't quite remember how many episodes that I have out there totally, but it's at least a decent bit. And you can find us on all podcast platforms. We have a Discord server. So if you want to join the nice corner of the internet, then come on by. Always happy to have you. And yeah.
Again, thanks for joining us, JJ. And folks, we hope you have a Merry Christmas. And if you don't celebrate Christmas and you celebrate other holidays, happy holidays. We hope you enjoy your time with your families. And remember, don't be a dick, because Krampus is going to come toss you in a sack and drown you.
He's going to make you rag on the hag.
Or take you down.
And he's going to make you rag. Yeah, he's going to toss you in the lake in the bag with the hag. And that's not something you want.
Happy holidays. Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays, folks. Thanks for tuning into today's episode of The Wandering Road. You can find us on Apple, Google, Spotify, and most podcast platforms. Be sure to subscribe and share. Also, don't forget to give a follow on Instagram at twroadpodcast and follow my TikTok at twrpodcast. Take care, and I'll catch you on the next one.